In just over a week's time, we will be having the NHL trade deadline, and although the names on this list are not anything necessarily too shiny, we'll be talking about it anyway and getting into where they might be going and all of that. And the nice thing is we'll be starting right up at the top with Noah Hannafin, the Calgary boy, who has been rumored to be on the move for almost the entire season because of the fact that he is an unrestricted free agent. Calgary most likely does not want to bring him back, is what everybody's been saying. Caleb, I'm kind of curious on just what you think on this entire thing as a whole, because I don't know if I remember what your opinion was on whether the Flames should move him in the first place.
I mean, it was always more of a, he was always more of the guy where I was a little bit more on the fence, where I'm like, if you're able to bring him back, like I think it comes down to what Hannafin wants. If Hannafin wants to be back in Calgary, like you're not going to trade him. Then I think he's one of the guys where it's okay to re-sign him. He's younger than, because we were looking at Tanev and Lindholm. Those two were a little bit more like, yeah, like they're either on down years and probably not going to come back. Hannafin was the one where it's like, if he wants to come back, I'm totally okay with not trading him and keeping him. But definitely, like I know it was kind of up in the air in terms of whether he'd come back. That was the one thing that my kind of opinion was resting on. Um, but I'm sure Craig Conroy has to know at this point because we're getting so close to the trade deadline. And if he knows that he's not coming back, he should be finding a deal pretty quick. Because I mean that's all you can do with these free agents, and it's just about trying to get as much value for these guys as you possibly can before you lose them for free. So I mean, Hannafin, I think would be. Tanev is also obviously to touch on that, he just got traded yesterday as of recording. That's obviously a huge loss. I think Hannafin may even be bigger in terms of, at least with Tanev, he's aging and it's not like he's going to be a part of this team's future. Hannafin, there was potentially a chance for that. Um, so I think it may even be a bigger loss in that regard. But yeah, I'm thinking when I look at Hannafin, um, if he, I know there was debates on whether he'd come back or not. There was worries about him telling Craig Conroy in time. As soon as Craig knows whether he's coming back or not, um, it should be time for him to pull the trigger. I don't know what kind of return he's going to get though. Hopefully more than he got for Tanev.
Yeah, and that has been the biggest part of that conversation is the fact that obviously with Tanev you only got a second, you only got a third, and a prospect who I do not remember the name of off the top of my head, but I remember he was, I believe, 20 forward, or no, he was a defenseman. He was a defenseman, more physical style, not necessarily the prospect a lot of Flames fans were looking for, because I think that a lot of people wanted us to get Stankoven.
There was no way.
There was no way, but that was a rumor for a bit that I have a funny feeling was started by Flames fans, not Dallas fans. Either way,
There
I'm
was
not
no
too
way that was
mad.
ever going to happen.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I was never too hopeful on that one, but I think I'm overall pretty happy with their return because the one comment I kept seeing as well, which is a very good way to look at it, is would you have rather get a second and a third and that prospect, or would you have rather kept Tanev? And I love Tanev. I like the whole time he's been on the Flames. I've thought that he's been a huge part of why this team was successful when it was successful, because I think that he's such a very underrated defenseman on that side of the puck, where he's one of the best defensive defensemen, and he has been for 10 years. But obviously, he is aging. He, I think, tr- I think imagining that you were going to get a first round pick for him was kind of out of the question a little bit, but nonetheless, you got what you got, right? Now, we're looking at somebody who you can get a first round pick for, almost without a doubt. If you can get a second and a third for Tanev, you're getting a first round pick for Hannafin. I think that actually shows exactly how much you could potentially get for Hannafin. I'm more just curious about where you would send him. Because one part of Hannafin's no trade clause is that he has an 8-team no trade list, is what I'm reading. So that most likely means that you can't really trade him to somewhere bad, or it has to be a
Yeah.
contender, which obviously when you're trading to a contender, salary cap starts to become a worry. So the Flames would either have to take somebody back who obviously has a little bit of cap to them, or they would have to retain again, but after retaining 50% of Tanev, you got to wonder how interested the Flames would be in doing that again.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I think it may be a cost you have to pay in terms of retaining the salary. Because I mean, it's not like the Flames need that salary cap space now, anyways, because their deal ends at the end of this year. Like, I don't think that's the biggest concern. I think if they have to retain the salary, they will. In terms of where he's going to go, it would be. I mean, the number one place that comes to mind would be a place where they would definitely have to retain the salary for it to work, and that's probably Toronto. Um, because I mean, that was the fit for Tanev that people were looking at because they just need defensemen, and obviously Bradford living there, like he's got history with Hannafin, like he probably would like to bring him back. I believe he was the one who brought him into Calgary in the first place. So that would be a good destination. Um, that's the number one. That's the number one spot that floats in at the top of my head. I don't know if you've got any other potential destinations for him.
Well, that's kind of the odd thing with this one. This move in particular is the fact that I honestly don't. I don't really see his name floating around with any other teams, and the ones that I have seen have been kind of jumbled all over the place since when this all started at the beginning of the year. It almost feels like people are just throwing out names and hoping they're right. But yeah, I'm not sure on that one. I think the one crazy thing about this entire thing is, and this came out back when we were trying to trade Markstrom, but the Flames have only retained salary cap, I believe, two times since Murray Edwards bought the team. One of them is the Chris Tanev trade, which a lot of people originally thought was the issue with the Markstrom trade to New Jersey, which caused that to fall apart. And now I think in my head, that's why I'm wondering whether retaining salary cap would be an issue with Noah Hannafin. I guess the one nice thing is the fact that for the rest of this season, I mean, it would only be for 1 year. I
Yeah,
guess it's not
and
really
and
the end of
here's
the
and
world,
here's the
but
thing. Like if retaining cap is the one thing that's keeping you from making a deal, then you're just gonna have to pay out more of the salary anyways. If you keep them, they're gonna have to pay the full salary instead of whatever it is, like half. Like that's just is so stupid to me. Like I don't think that's gonna be the decision maker. They probably don't do it that often, just because if they find other deals where they don't have to, they'll take that. Um, I don't know. I just don't think that should ever be a priority for a team when making a trade. Like, I think if you're a bad team like the Flames, I mean, 3 game, 4 game winning streak aside, like the Flames are right now, if you're a rebuilding team, like you take retaining salary is a great strategy to get more from teams. You use it as a bargaining chip to get more prospects, more picks, whatever you can get for that. Because if retaining salary is the one thing that's the difference between making a Hennepin trade go through and making it not go through, then you've got to do it. I know they don't do it very often, but I feel like you have to.
no, and I don't disagree. Just logic wise, I definitely agree with you. But I think we can move on. I don't know if I have a team to throw out for Hannafin. I'm going to try to throw out a couple more for as we move down the list, but Hannafin's the odd one to me, where he really is the type of defenseman who can fit in most teams' style. Like he's not very bad defense. He's very balanced. Like he can score. He can play defense very solid. He has a very good two-way game that I don't know if there's a specific team off the top of my head that necessarily needs him. I think there's a lot of contenders that would love to have him. I think it's just whether the Flames can make it work. And it'll be interesting to see if that happens. But the next player we got on our list here is Adam Henrique from the Anaheim Ducks. And he's a bit of an interesting one, as I know the Ducks have had a bit of a interesting year as a whole with their big star going to the year Zegras. I believe he had one really crap start to the year, and I honestly don't even remember off the top of my head if he has turned it around. But I know that's been a big storyline in their season, as well as just a fact. I don't think they've been very good this year, if I remember right, but I'd have to
The
pull up the
Ducks?
standings
No,
in front of me. No, I didn't think so. And I think,
no, they're 43 points, not very good.
yeah, I mean Zegras, 20 games played, 7 points. Not a good season from him. And I'm guessing the 20 games is because he got hurt somewhere along the way, and probably still is. But either way, Adam Henrique is one of those veteran forwards who a lot of contending teams would most likely want to get their hands on. Caleb, I'm kind of. Do you have any teams you want to throw out there? off the top of your head?
Um, before I talk about what teams potentially for Henrique, I do just want to say, for Hannafin, there was just saw this report from the score that was like an hour ago that the Bruins and Lightning are some of the potential
Oh,
teams
I had
for
heard
Hannafin.
Lightning. Lightning was
Yeah,
one
so
I'd
that
heard. I
that's
hadn't heard Bruins.
yeah, that's potentially interesting. But in terms of, in terms of Henrique, the one big thing for me is that he's an older player. I feel like Adam Henrique has been around the league forever. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like he's one of those players who's been around as long as I can remember, and I honestly kind of forgot that he was still in the league.
Yeah. A little
And
bit.
his, if this website we've got up is any indication, like it's a pretty hefty cap hit. Like I didn't know he was making that much money, to where it's like 5.8 million.
Yeah.
Um, I
He
don't know if
does
that's
expire
accurate.
at the end of the year, though.
Yeah, this website also lists him as a goalie though,
Yeah,
so
that's true.
maybe it's not accurate. Maybe we can find another. If Adam Henrique isn't, I'd be pretty
He's
surprised if
also,
Adam
and
Henrique was
Henrique is
making that
also
money.
not 33, I believe you said. So we're kind of just using the
Yeah.
list of names, not necessarily anything else. But either way,
Okay, no, cap friendly backs it up. It is
it
5.8.
is 5.8.
So
Okay.
that's a
I was gonna say
that
that
is
sounds
a
about right for Henrique.
yeah. That's like that's a pretty decent cap hit.
No,
And
yeah,
it's
it's
like
not little.
I don't know if I'm any contending teams. Like you got to look at the ones with cap space. I think the Ducks are. I feel like if the Ducks are making a deal with that, you're gonna have to retain salary. Um, Same kind of situation with Hannafin, where it's like it's not even a conversation. Like even more so for Henrique with a number that big, because Hannafin has a smaller contract than that. Hannafin's hovering at just around 5, so it's almost a million more. Um, I was gonna say in terms of teams that I would throw out there, I was gonna throw out Bruins, but they're kind of screwed in terms of cap space.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, that's the
oh
tough
my
thing
God,
when
the
you're
Leafs.
talking about like any of these trades is the fact that cap space is
Yeah,
such a huge issue with almost all of them.
yes. In terms of teams that like it looks like they could actually make a move. Yeah, a lot of these contending teams don't have that kind of cap space. Um, One that I might throw out there that does, like Detroit might be one. They're making a pretty big playoff push. They've had like a great string of success, and their big free agent pickup Patrick Kane has been playing pretty well.
Yeah.
If you want to add a little bit more of a veteran presence to that locker room and like really try to make a push this year, it may be a little bit too early because I know that they're not necessarily one of those teams where it's like win now. They're kind
Yeah.
of like win in the next like 2 to 3 years, and like this is still a good playoff team. The Bruins were the other team that I would throw out there. Like that just feels like a good fit, and it feels like the Bruins are the team that are another team, are more so a team that would be like win now in terms of where they are. That feels about right. Um, Otherwise, yeah, like this is one where I feel like a deal might not happen just because of age and because of money. Like it feels like if a deal's gonna happen, it's are people gonna like it, I think it would purely be a rental because I don't know what team is gonna want to re-sign him with how old he is, and I think he's playing okay, but it's not like anything world beating. It's just for a team who needs a veteran presence for the playoff push, then he'll do good in providing that. So that's kind of why I'm looking to Detroit. Detroit and Boston are my two, and even then, I might be a little bit surprised if a deal for him gets done. That one might be a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of the points you made. So some of the teams that I'm just reading, like seeing, have been connected with Henrique is actually the Bruins. Funnily enough, with what you said about their cap, but another one that I'm hearing is the Oilers, which is interesting to me. Is that's another team
Mm.
that could potentially try and pad their top six a little bit more. Apparently, the asking price. I'm trying to find a source on this one. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to find it, but the asking price is a second and a third for Henrique, so similar to Tanev.
Which makes sense because they're around the same age, hey?
Yeah, no, I'd say it makes sense. I think I'd value Tanev a bit more than I'd value Henrique, but then
I
again,
would
different
too,
teams
but
need different
it
things.
depends on needs. Yeah.
Yeah, it that which is very true. Yeah, for sure. And I think the Oilers one is really interesting to me at the very least because that absolutely is a team where they brought in a couple players who have not worked out for them, who they plan to have
Yeah.
work out in their top six, and everyone was so surprised about it. One of those was Connor Brown, who I believe
Oh my
has
god.
less points on the season.
Which podcast called that?
Yeah, God, which
Which podcast was on the Connor Brown hating beat before it was cool?
Yeah, I guess. How many points does he have on the year again? I'm trying to remember. He has 5. He has 5 assists.
Can you
no
get
goals.
negative points?
He has.
Oh my god, he's gonna be on the line with McDavid. Oh my god, he's gonna be so
What line
good.
has he been
Just
playing on this year?
just like back when they were in junior. Okay. This is why you never take Oilers media seriously.
Yeah.
Like I feel like we should have learned that lesson by now.
Well, same thing with Flames.
I already don't take Flames media seriously.
Oh,
Like
okay.
that's
Well, as long as you know.
even what you were mentioning. Oh, we're gonna get Stan Coven for Tannen. Okay.
No, that one I didn't believe either, but I allowed myself to be hopeful. Because like there was also a
We're gonna
report.
get a first round pick for Tanev.
Hey, there was
No, we're
also a
not.
report that Stankoven was like sat like the night before the trade, and everyone was like, "Oh, maybe it'll happen," but no, guess not. It would have been cool. He seems like a cool player to watch, but I'm still excited.
It would have been cool.
Yeah,
I think we would have had to
Oilers-
give up Hanifin and Tanev.
Looking at the Oilers' top 6, they actually do have a pretty good top 6, depending on how good Evander Kane and Connor McDavid's relationship is. After I don't know if you saw all that, Caleb, but
No.
Do we want to talk about that on the podcast? I don't know. It was more of stuff that Evander Kane's wife came out and said specifically about Connor McDavid himself, and I'm sure you probably saw a video a while back. Like I want to say a year and a half ago about McDavid getting into a car holding the hand of a woman who absolutely was not his wife. It was more related to some allegations surrounding that. And Evander Kane and Connor McDavid then apparently unfollowed each other on Instagram because everybody knows that instantly means that you hate each other. And yeah, so that whole thing happened. So who knows what could be happening in that locker room right now. But either way.
I have not heard anything about that.
I don't want to get into any more information than that because the nitty-gritty is a little too nitty-gritty for me. But it's definitely worth a good read if you're interested. But yeah, I will say their bottom 6 isn't terrible either, but it would definitely be a lot better with Adam Henrique in it.
Their problem has always been depth, right? Like
Yeah.
that's always it's been the Oilers' problem since day one, and this provides that. But I do feel like it's the same kind of cycle that we go through for the Oilers every year in terms of like, what veteran are we going to pick up at the deadline, and that's going to be the one to push us over the hump. It's who the last year. Who's the defenseman from Nashville?
Oh, Ekholm.
Yes, Ekholm.
Yeah.
Ekholm.
But yeah, I do know what you mean. I don't think Henrique is that by any means because I don't actually think he pushes any of their players out of the top 6 that they currently have right now.
No, he'd be like a third line guy.
Assuming they don't trade someone in their top 6 to get him. But
that would be kind of stupid.
Yeah,
that would be kind of stupid.
It would be a little bit. I don't disagree, but I think he would.
I think
fit
he'd bring
pretty
him
well.
in for depth.
Yeah, for sure. I think he'd fit pretty well in that third line though, with Brian McLeod, Corey Perry. That's not a bad third line. And I mean, like, honestly, this Oilers team is really good. Like, overall, like, you pointed out the fact that their depth has always been their issue. This season, it's not quite as bad. I mean, Connor Brown, only 5 assists on the year. Not great, but, like, other than that, like, Dylan Holloway, Sam Gagner, that's a fairly good fourth line overall. Like,
Sam Gagner is still funny to me, but
whatever.
I think it's funny that he's still playing.
You think so? How old is he at this point? I guess he's got to be.
I feel like he's got to be like 45. I don't know. I feel like he's been around forever.
Well, because he was in juniors in 2010, wasn't he?
Oh no, He's 34. I don't know why I feel like he's so old.
Because 34 makes sense. Like 14 years ago, 2010. There you go.
He was not. He was drafted in 2007. I think that's why I'm like, okay, this guy's got to be out of the league by now.
I guess. But either way, like, that's not a bad bottom line at all. Although he does only have 10 points on the season. That's pretty ass as well. But,
yeah,
like, I mean, overall, fourth line, not terrible. I think with this Oilers team, it's the same issue it's been like at certain points where it's just like you gotta fucking do it. Like you just gotta. It's the type of thing where you have all the talent in the world. You've finally clogged all the holes in your ship. It's just getting across the finish line, and actually doing it. And that's what it is for this Oilers team. Like I think that's the biggest difference for me. Is almost, I don't know why you'd make that trade. I guess I don't really know why you'd bring in Henry.
I feel like there's bigger fish. I feel like there's bigger fish. You know?
I don't know what, like you could bring in a better goalie. That I believe for Edmonton, but it's the same issue I brought up every single time someone has gone, "Oh, the Oilers should trade for Markstrom." They're already paying two goaltenders like over 3 or 4 million
Yeah.
dollars, which is their issue.
Their cap situation isn't very good either.
Which would not be fun to do, by the way, as that would probably cost a pick or two to get rid of if they don't do it in the same trade, which would decrease how much you get in return, which obviously I don't think the Oilers are going to like either. But yeah, no, I don't really like their odds of landing Henry. As for Boston, it's just a cap issue at that point. I don't know if I like that match for. I think Henry could fit better with the Oilers, but I could see him over there. The next one on the list is another interesting one.
This is the most interesting one, I think.
Yeah, Jake Gensel, which a lot of conversation has been around the fact that he is hurt. He was probably number one on the list of people to potentially be moved up until that injury. And now that injury has slid him down just a touch. But I still think that any legitimate playoff team would be pretty stupid to not try and bring him in if he's back in time for the playoffs, which all reports are leaning towards, yes, he will be back for the playoffs.
Yeah, I feel like even with the injury, I mean, it's like you just said, the playoffs is the reason teams are going to be picking up these guys is because they're already in a decent spot and they need someone for the playoffs. And I mean, the two teams that have been linked to him that I think are the logical spots, one I think more than the other, is Vancouver and Vegas. Those are the two spots that I've always seen him be linked to, and I think Vancouver is the number one because I think I Vancouver. This feels like a special year. I mean, because I've talked about earlier in the season how I didn't even really believe this. I still feel like their success is almost like what's happening here. You know what it almost feels like? It feels like that one year where the Flames were really good, and then they were the first overall seed, and then they got what 4-1 against the Avs.
I remember it well.
Yeah, it's like that would almost be my worry for Vancouver, where it's like your regular season success is kind of like ephemeral and it kind of goes away. That would be my worry. And I think bringing in a guy like Gensel, who's got that playoff experience but is also still young, because he was there for the Penguins Cup runs of like 16, 17, like that kind of era. That would be like almost a perfect fit for them. And it just makes so much sense in my head. I mean, Vegas is the only one that's been listed and linked to him, so I mean, I guess that could happen too. Both teams are kind of screwed for cap space, but I mean, I don't know. The cap is kind of magic. Just put someone on LTIR and it fixes everything, I guess.
Well,
the Leafs are the cap.
Wouldn't he be on LTIR?
Yes. At least until like whatever they said, like March 10th was the earliest they could bring him off. I don't know. It just makes so much sense for Vancouver. Like I do feel like you have to go all in on this year, like because I don't know. Before this year, I was like, the Canucks almost have the worst future in the NHL. Like that's what I was saying before this year, and I was proven wrong. I guess
all of their prospects all worked out all at the same time.
Yeah, I still don't even really know how they're this successful. But no, I mean, if you're running hot, you might as well go for it. So I think that's kind of my rationale. It's like if you're gonna make a move, I think Gensel is the most attractive. Like out of any of these players, I get that he's hurt. Whatever, he's gonna be back for the playoffs. At least that's what all indications say. If he's gonna be back for the playoffs, you make this move. So I don't know. I think that again, I think he's the most exciting free agent, or not free agent. I think he's the most exciting like trade bait guy out there. So I think if any of these like Vancouver, Vegas, top of the division type teams are going to make a move, it should be for Gensel. And if I'm Vancouver, I'm already like sending in offers every day. Like that's the move they have to make.
Yeah. And with Vancouver, the one thing that they absolutely do have to be the opposite of Edmonton is they have insane depth. Like all through this lineup
Yeah.
is pretty nuts, just with how balanced they are. And a player like Gensel would do wonders to that top six. As I would say, their biggest strength is straight down the middle. So adding an elite winger to really help you out there in that top six would just put you over the top. Like, and you could pretty much mix and match that top six as well. With like, it doesn't matter who you put together at that point, it would work. And I
Hmm.
think, yeah, I really like that matchup. I'm really happy you brought up Vancouver actually, because I think I do agree with you. I think they're the team to really watch for in a trade with them. I also think Vegas would be a fairly good team to pick them up for a lot of obvious reasons. They're the Stanley Cup. They're the reigning champions. I'm sure they're going to be trying to make a couple moves here to try and make their team just a touch better. And it is not unknown for Vegas to pull people off the
Yeah.
LTIR right before the playoffs. So
Yeah.
I think I wouldn't be shocked if Vegas tried to make a run out as well. But I would say I'd want Vancouver to get him. I would love for Vancouver to
Yeah.
make a magical run this season, as that would be very
I
entertaining.
would too. I get to be part of the riots this time. I'm
Yeah,
here.
when they lose to like
I'll
Boston again.
I'll I'll, I'll get to flip over a car and set things on fire. It's gonna be so fun. I can't wait.
I can't wait for when
Um,
it actually happens, and you're gonna have to go like you're gonna have to come on the podcast like the week after. Go like, just to be clear, I was not involved.
I was not there. I was not there.
Yeah, but I do think this Vancouver team absolutely does have the potential to be something special. But
Yeah.
it's just gonna come down to again if they can do it, as there are definitely a couple holes in their roster. There's a reason a lot of people didn't think they would be that good going into the season, and even if they
Yes.
have proven a lot of people wrong, a lot of teams that play over their potential tend to fall flat when things really hit the fan. And I'm kind of just
Yeah.
curious to see what happens for Vancouver when that happens. And the best thing that you can do to completely avoid that is to bring in more talent. And that is the one thing they absolutely do have the potential to do there. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think we can move on because we're going rather slow. The next one here, Vladimir Tarasenko for the Ottawa Senators, which me and you were both talking about before the podcast. The odd thing here is neither of us had even heard that he was on the market, but it does make sense that he could potentially get moved, considering the fact that I mean Ottawa just hasn't been very good this year. That's been most their big issue with they have
Yeah.
severely underperformed. Tarasenko not necessarily immune to that either, as he hasn't had an incredible season, at least not to his standards. Not a bad one, but not a great one. So not something you would expect for someone who 2 or 3 years ago was a very elite winger. So, in my opinion, the one thing that is going to be interesting is what kind of return you get for Tarasenko more than anything, because I think a lot of a lot of contending teams would probably want him. It's why Ottawa wanted him. They thought that they were going to
Yeah.
be a contender this year, and that's why they brought him in. But I think it all just comes down to what you would be getting for him, because you don't know what you're getting with Tarasenko, I guess. Are you trading for
Yeah.
someone with the potential to go back in the right situation to the player we've seen in the past, or are you trading for the top six player he sort of has become?
And I mean, I don't think you're ever going to go back to like the player he was. Like I do think that because how old is he now? How old is he now? He's getting up there in age. Um,
He
he's
is.
third. This website says 32, but I
Yep,
know.
32 is right.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, he's getting up there. Um, kind of like coming off of his like the end of his prime, like just finished that era, I'd say. So it's like obviously you're not going to get that same level of production, but I do think he's still a valuable player to have. Another player that's been through a Stanley Cup run in
Very true.
2019, so that provides that kind of playoff experience. So it's a similar kind of group of teams. It'd be a similar kind of group of teams that are looking at him that are probably looking at Gensel's same kind of. I haven't seen him linked to Vancouver anywhere. I think Gensel's the big fish there. That's what they're going for. So maybe they don't
I
have as
think it
many
just depends on whether you're
eyes on
trading for
Tarasenko.
someone who you're bringing in only for this run, or are you trading for someone who are bringing in permanently to be part of your core? Because I think that's
Yeah.
what Gensel is. Gensel is a permanent. You're not trading for him for 1 year. you are going to sign him to a big deal and he's going to stick around for a while. Tarasenko,
Yeah,
I don't actually know if he's expiring at the end of the year. I'm kind of just assuming here, but
I believe he is.
he is. Yes, Tarasenko is as well. But are you going to sign Tarasenko to a big contract at the end of the year? I mean, you can, but I have a funny feeling you won't. You're probably going to let him walk. So I think that's also going to be a big part of how much money you pay him is the fact that he is a rental. I don't think Gensel's a rental. I think you're trading for someone you expect to keep around.
I would agree with that. And I think, cause again, so when you look for rentals, you're looking for those teams at the very top. And I think my number one is probably Florida. Would be my number one
Yeah.
spot for him to go to because I think he fits in pretty well in the top six, kind of second line spot there. Because as it stands, they've got what is it? Verhage, Barkov, Reinhardt is pretty set in stone, and they've got Bennett and Kachuk playing with Nick Cousins. I think you could probably bump Cousins down, and then that forms a pretty solid top six. And then I think the Panthers are already doing really well. I believe they're are they first or second in their division at this point? I think they're first. Yeah, tied with Boston. Um, so obviously they've had a lot of success. They probably want to replicate the cup run they made last year, and adding a veteran guy like Tarasenko definitely helps.
Yeah. And I mean, I agree with a lot of that as well. The one team that I am seeing, I'm not seeing a lot of teams, but the one team I am seeing is the Islanders. Yeah. No, they're currently sitting at about.
They're
Where are
not
they
looking too
finished?
good.
Oh, they aren't.
That
Okay,
would
well
be a
then
weird
I
one.
am very curious to why they're rumored to go grab him then, because of the fact that yeah, they are in an interesting spot, fifth in the standings
Uh,
in their division. I'm not too sure why they're rumored to go grab him because
that would be such a weird one for me.
you would
I
assume
wouldn't
they'd
see
want to
that.
sign him to a longer deal.
Tarasenko was such a win now move, and the Islanders are not in win now move. They are in like same kind of spot as Calgary. It's like make the playoffs is your goal, and that is nowhere near a guarantee. Which is why I'm like I don't see that happening at all. I think it has to be someone who is like realistic expectations of going to the Stanley Cup, and I think that's what Tarasenko would want too. Like I think it's something we forget is like these players are also chasing like a ring at this point as well. And I don't think if Tarasenko's going for a ring, he's not doing the Islanders.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you. The Islanders do have talent. Like when I did that was the thing. I didn't know what their situation actually was when I did see that one, but they do have quite a bit of talent. They're not a bad team on paper. It's just clearly not worked out very well for them so far. Like but they do have the talent to potentially try and turn things around, so I guess I could see why they might think they might be able to do something with it if they could put him on a line with Bo Horvat and Barzell. That's a pretty good line, but
It
I
is, but like
guess
I don't know, like your season has been up and down at this
yeah,
point. Like I don't think are they like they're not even on a 2 game winning streak. Okay, like they're 5-3-2 in their last 10. It's not like they're on some sort of like heater where like Detroit, where it's like you figure you're going to get into the playoffs with how you've been playing as of lately. They're like 6 points out of a wild card spot,
yeah.
and I just don't see it.
No, I don't think I do either. Like I just thought I'd throw it out there as well because that is the one team I am seeing. I'm not seeing a lot of other names. I mean, this one again, kind of for the same reason as Adam Henrique, I think, but I am seeing the Oilers. So I guess that could be another player that they could go for,
Yeah,
but
that one would make a little bit more sense.
yeah, I actually I guess Tarasenko's a little bit less money than Henrique, so I guess that would work a
Also,
bit more
probably
for them.
a better player at this point still.
I guess. Yeah. I mean it's a completely different kind of player. I think I like Henrique more for the
Yes.
Oilers because they don't really need pure scorers. I think they've got that covered.
No, they do kind of have that covered. It's true.
Like I that's why I kind of like Henrique more for them, just because a two-way forward you can never have enough two-way forwards on your lineup, at least in my opinion. But
Tarasenko's the flashier move that they would totally make, though. I almost see it as more likely.
that's true. Actually, yeah, no, it is a very Oilers move to make, and like to pick him up for like way too much as well.
Yeah.
I can see that, but whatever. I mean, I think there's one more that I'd like to touch on, maybe two. We can maybe talk about Buchnevich, but the one that we should talk about a little bit, probably not for too long because it doesn't sound like it's actually going to happen, but Jacob Markstrom. In the last, I believe, a couple hours as of recording this podcast, they just said the Flames came out and announced that they will not be trading Jacob Markstrom, which is very interesting, all things considered, because, I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense. It kind of says this complete opposite of what you're kind of saying by trading a player like Elias Lindholm, even if that has worked out fairly positively. As for record in the last little bit, it is kind of an interesting move to hold on to an aging player there who has been who right now their value is higher than ever. If Markstrom falls off a cliff at the end of this year, I don't think you're getting a first round pick for him. So I think the Flames, if you're not moving him, you have to pray that he continues to play well. And
Yeah.
I know that I've heard the argument I've heard, and I'm just going to throw this out to you, Caleb, because I also want your opinion on this, is that, and it's kind of true, most goalies are usually worth more in the offseason, is the argument that I've kind of heard, and a lot of teams don't really want to go out of their way to grab goalies ahead of a playoff run, because if they're in that top spot, obviously Devils are a bit of an exception, but if they're in that top spot, generally they already have either a goaltender who's elite in their own right, or they might just be playing hot. Either way, you don't really want to trade for somebody to try and replace that most of the time. But I don't know.
Yeah, I could see that. And I mean, Markstrom is unique in that he's like the only one of these guys who is not a pending UFA. So it's not like there's.
Yeah.
I feel like he's gonna. I feel like he has to get traded by the end of that contract, and I do think it's almost. I would be okay if he got traded in the offseason. There's not as much urgency to trade him now because it's not like you're going to lose him for nothing. I do still think you're trying to get as much value out of him as you can because, like you made the good point, it's like he's playing the best hockey that he's played in a while now, and we didn't see that last season. And so fear is that he plays bad the rest of this season, or he plays poorly next season, and then you can't get as much for him. But it's the kind of thing where it's like I do kind of get that argument where I'd be okay with letting him. I would be okay with saying hold on to him until the end of the season as long as you make a deal at the end of the season. Because where I would get scared is if they hold on to him past this off season, and then at that point that when they're like.
At that point, do you talk about trading?
He's been so up and down.
Like.
Yeah.
I mean. I know the other argument I've heard. I haven't heard his name in the last little bit, but I remember the last person I think who brought it up to me was Anand on the podcast. But he brought up the idea of trading Vladar, and I wonder if the Flames are going to look into that a little bit in the next week, and maybe we'll see some rumors on that. I kind of doubt
maybe
it.
You're just not gonna get anything for him.
Oh God, no. I do agree with you. I think at that point you're just.
It's just to make room for Wolf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which. I think if they wanted to do that, they would have. So.
Yeah, they would have done it earlier.
Yeah, I think they would have already done it. So. Yeah, I don't know. It's a little bit of an interesting one. If the Flames did trade him, the only real name at this point that anybody had been hearing was the Devils. That is the big one because they make way too much sense, and that's why it just can't work apparently. That's the one matchup where like trading him now makes so much sense because of the fact that they just have no goaltending. They have so much talent. Like all their.
I almost wonder if. Well, that was your Stanley Cup pick. I almost wonder if the fact that the Devils are like not quite as good as we thought they would be, if that's hurting the trade. Because do you think if the goaltending was still bad and the Devils were in a playoff spot right now, I feel like they would have done it already.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that deal would have already been made. I feel like they would have been willing to give up more. And I feel like the fact that they are currently same situation as the Islanders, exact same situation as the Islanders, they're currently 6 points out of a wild card spot. Like, it's also, I do think the Devils have a significantly better chance of getting that because, I mean, they have a lot better talent and a lot of younger talent.
Yeah.
And I do think goaltending is their one massive hole. But I think if they were in that spot a little bit more, then they'd make that move. But because they're not, they're probably willing to wait and say, like, why don't we just get him in the off season? That would kind of be what I'm thinking. And I'm not mad if it goes out that way. As a Flames fan, I'm okay with that. I
Yeah.
think you just have to get rid of him by the end of the offseason.
At this point, I've accepted the fact that Wolf just isn't getting that much NHL time this year, as stupid and dumb as it is. I
Yeah.
I don't even know what to do anymore with that situation, just because it's kind of been blown out of proportion so much that because of the fact that they
Yeah.
waited so long. Like, the funny thing is, I still remember. I think it was a week or two ago. Wolf had like a crap game when he was called up to like replace for. I think it was an injured Vladar, and instantly the whole internet turned on him, and it was just hilarious to watch, saying that he was too short to play in the NHL, which is just the funniest thing in the entire world, because the whole thing that everybody's been getting pissy about on Twitter is the fact that the Flames haven't done anything yet. But now people are saying that they shouldn't, because Wolf will never be better than an AHL starter. Which, you know what? Whatever. Welcome to Twitter. That's been.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I had a fun time reading all those tweets. Either way, it's important to have a memory of a goldfish whenever scrolling on Twitter.
Yes.
I think I'm pretty happy to move on, though. I don't know if you do want to talk about Buchnevich, if you want to touch on that one.
I can. I mean, we can run through that quick. I mean, I do think he's one of the more interesting guys because he's the youngest, other than Hannafin, I guess. He's the youngest player on this list. He's a little bit older than I thought, honestly, but he's still young, still a great player. Also, another guy with playoff experience. He'd be a guy similar to a Gensel in this realm where he's a Gensel, but not to the same
not as
extent.
skilled, but yes, I do know what you mean.
Yes. He's like a he's almost like a no-name brand Gensel in terms of what you're getting.
That might be too weird,
like
but yeah, he's still a very, very skilled player. It's just like I
he's
think
still a very, very
the
skilled
fact
player,
that
but
Gensel
I'm not saying like
is on the market is
it would,
kind of
to
making
say,
it
to say
interesting.
the no-name brand. It's not
No, I
necessarily
do know what you
saying
mean.
that.
I do know what you mean.
It's just like it's you're getting the similar kind of thing with what you want. It's just like not quite to the same level.
Yeah.
It's not. Yeah, and maybe that was a little bit of a harsh comparison, but it is still the kind of thing where it's like you're getting a good, still relatively young player who has playoff experience, and he's still going to be able to contribute to your team.
Okay, Caleb, for $1 million, who do you think is interested in this forward to add to their top six?
Oh boy. Probably Edmonton, probably all the same. Probably Vancouver, probably all the same teams.
I was more just meaning the Oilers, because they are one of the teams rumored.
I was gonna say that's probably. Yeah.
They apparently have scouted him. I mean, sure. That's it's the same thing. Yeah.
As an Oilers fan, if you don't give up too much for him, that would probably be the one I'd be most excited about. Honestly,
what is it rumored to cost?
That's realistic.
First, it might be a first. Holy.
I could see a first.
I could too, but I don't know if the Oilers would want to give that up.
Maybe not. I mean, the thing with these, like, it is a late. It will be a late first.
It will be.
That's the thing.
Yeah. Yeah, but like a first prospect is kind of what I'm hearing, which makes sense. A couple other teams.
I mean, I don't think we got to Gensel, but Gensel was talking. There was rumors that it might be 2 first-round picks. So it's like
that. I do sort of believe. Well, I'm sure that was before his injury. Now it's kind of. It'll still be high.
The story that I was reading was saying that it would still be the same price.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good for
the injury. The injury
has
dissuaded teams. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good for them. But yeah, other teams: Detroit Red Wings, Carolina Hurricanes, Buffalo Sabres. A lot of names that probably wouldn't surprise you too much. But
Sabres won a little bit, but otherwise, yeah, that all makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that is the funny thing about this article is with Buffalo, they open it by saying, "Why does he make sense?" And they just say, "Good question." So I think they're even kind of
Well, there we go.
questioning that rumor a little bit. But
Yeah.
either way, Carolina and Detroit, I think I like how he would probably line up for both of those teams, maybe a bit more than Edmonton, just because I think Edmonton, I don't know why they're trying to add to their top six, honestly. I feel like if I'm Edmonton, I do. Like, you kind of made fun of their whole thing of bringing in Corey Perry, bringing in, like, those kind of, like, vet guys just to fill out their bottom six. But I almost feel like that's smarter. I don't know if you necessarily need to go out of your way to trade away a first round pick. If you want to, I'm sure it
I
doesn't
guess.
help. But,
I don't
or
know.
it doesn't,
I feel like you've got
it can't
you're
hurt.
not building for the future. You're building
Sure.
for now. You've got
That's
the
true.
two best players in the world. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. I don't know. I just think that if you're the Oilers, I don't know if I'm trading my first for Gensel. I don't know if I'm trading my first for Buchnevich.
Trade your first for the next 2 years for.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It's a tough situation for them. But I mean, it's a tough situation for all these teams and just whether that's worth it or not, but we'll see. I really like the idea of him on like Carolina or Detroit. I think both of those teams make a
Yeah.
lot more sense, just like overall, just scheme wise, and just adding to. They're both already stacked and going to make a decent run at the playoffs. So I think that matchup would work really well. So are the Oilers in their own right, but I don't know if necessarily a top six player is what they need as much. Adding, I feel like I'd trade a first for like I don't know. I'd bring in a defenseman. I've been saying that for the Oilers for fucking as long as I can remember, but you know.
Yeah, but I mean, there's not that many good defensemen out there. Is the thing. Like it's a more forward oriented,
The best two were on your rival down south, so
and you're not going to be getting those. The Conrad's not going to be making a deal with the Oilers.
that's true actually. That's a very good point. Especially like I wasn't even thinking about that actually. I wonder how much that helps. Be it like having a former Flame, seeing
Oh
like
yeah, it's
Holland's
never
phone
going to
number on
happen.
there, just going, nah. Not happening.
It's never going to happen. No, and I mean, there's very little precedent for it, anyways. Like Lucic, Neal,
Oh, I guess.
but other than that,
Like Ladislav
other than
Speed,
that,
if you remember that trade back in like
yeah,
2015-ish,
there's a
2014.
reason it never happens. There's a reason it never
Shout out
happens.
to all my homies who remember
Teams don't want to
Laurent
make their rivals
Brossois.
better. Oh yeah, yep.
Because I think he was part of that trade too. I think there was one other trade that I can't remember anymore. That also.
I think that might be it for recent. Because I think they had only made like 3-ish. I feel like they've only made like 3 trades.
It's the number is not a lot, but I am curious, so I'm gonna quickly take a dive into that. The first Flames and Oilers trade was in 2010, with it being actually, you know what? It is still fairly recent because it is only 3 years earlier than the Ladislav Smith trade.
Yeah, it's
Which
only
is funny.
three.
Which is funny to call it that, considering Smead wasn't even that good. But that should speak on how big that trade even happening was. But it was Steve Stais being traded for Aaron Johnson and a third-round pick. Wow.
Oh boy,
I've never
really?
heard. I knew who Steve Stais was. Never heard of Aaron Johnson. But all right. And then yeah, I do remember this 2013 trade. And then it's the Lucic Neal. Yep, those are the 3. So it is 3. Was that the number you said?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So you
Called
knew
it.
on that one. I for some reason thought there was one in like the 2000s. I didn't think 2010s cuz I thought there was one more, but maybe I was just thinking of the Stais trade. Who knows? But I think that is all the big names that are really worth talking about. We'll see who actually ends up getting traded. Some of these are definitely more realistic than others, but nonetheless, it'll definitely make for an interesting post-trade deadline half of the years. There are a lot of very talented teams this year, and I think it is really a toss-up on who the favorite is. There's not really a clear team that I think stands ahead of the pack. There's no Boston Bruins this year, so
Yeah.
I think it's going to be really, really interesting to see where a lot of these players go.